a Oh, we're recording. Okay. Anyway, there's been a lot of things done. And we'll get into, the what needs to be done in the future and the status of things in this meeting. But we need to start off with a calling of the roll, the certifying the proxies. Dana, you received proxies in the home office, correct?
That is correct. We have enough proxies to meet the quorum and hold the meeting.
Okay. And we've notified everyone of the meeting within, what is it, 48 hours?
We have all the proper notifications sent and the affidavit of mailing signed and filed.
Okay. So next is approval of the minutes. If everyone's had the opportunity to review the previous minutes, we need a motion to accept those minutes.
I'll move to accept them. Oops, there's a lot of feedback there. I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Right, okay. Minutes are approved. So yeah, by the way, Marilyn and Dana, when both of you were on, there's some fairly significant feedback. Okay. New business, let's walk through hurricane status. Let's start with, you want to start with financials, Marilyn, or should we have Dana go?
I can start with the financials.
Okay, let's do that.
We collected $720,000 in the special assessment. We filed insurance claims slightly over $300,000 and received $283,000 back for a total of just over $1 million. And our damage estimate currently, as of this morning, is $826,393. So if things continue on this vein, it's possible that we could return around $2,400 to the owners in Q3, I would suggest, because we still have about $200,000 to run through in repairs. For instance, New IQ, which does our building entry system, Kone still has to come out and finish the work they did. We may have some roof work with Crowther and of course landscaping. So that's where we're at.
And does that include paying off the loan, Marilyn?
No, we have enough money that we can start to pay off the loan. Initially, I thought maybe $10,000 per month, but we could probably escalate that. So let's say try to aim to have it paid off certainly within a year, I would say.
So you would recommend potentially returning, $2,000, $2,400 to residents in the third quarter, but we would still have a loan to pay off.
Yeah, based on what I know of damage, but making sure that there isn't anything that's emerging that we're either not aware of or haven't put a good figure on.
Yeah. Okay. And we had a decent carryover from last year.
We did. We carried over almost $150,000 last year because in the fourth quarter we basically had no maintenance, and our electricity wasn't working at the pool, and the fountains, which roughly represents about 50% of the electricity bill. So that is a real rainbow for us, because we know that our insurance could be over $300,000 this year. So this will give us a bit of a cushion in retained earnings to cover those increased insurance premiums. I have no idea what it could be. I'm thinking we're budgeted 250, but it could be over 300. And I just don't know where over 300 is going to be. We'll
Right.
know in 2 weeks. We'll know in 2 weeks.
Right. Okay. Any discussion about that, board? Okay. Let's move on. Dana, you disappeared.
She's back.
So Dana, we want to talk about the list of things that are ongoing, and you're the best person to walk us through that.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So for the operational side of the hurricane recovery items, I'm going to start again with the electrical. The street lamps, we're working with West Coast Electric. The entrance panel, we're still waiting for FPL to turn off and replace the meter. When they do that, West Coast will come out and take care of that panel. This is also impacting the fountain at the lake. So that fountain, we already contacted Solitude Lake Management and they can do all the repairs as soon as we're ready to go with that. The building 3 timer for the street lamps is partially installed. They're waiting for an extra part to finish that off. I've reached out to Jennifer at West Coast and she's helping us track down the bulbs, the sheaths and the domes that are necessary to complete the street lamps, the things that were damaged during the hurricane. The emergency lighting systems, all the parts are at West Coast. The welders fabricating the irons, and they actually have one system ready to be placed. I spoke with them this morning, so we've got one ready to go. And the building 3 atrium fountain is currently empty, so Leo could make a repair on leaking pipe by the float. The repair's been completed, but we've come up with an issue at the breaker panel that we're working with West Coast to take care of. When it comes to the domestic booster pumps, I'm hoping everybody got my emails about having Waterworks out here a couple of weeks ago, along with Bonita Utilities. And the biggest repair we had for domestic booster pumps was one they had to take one out of building 2, do some refurb work on it. They've replaced that booster pump now. They put it back a couple of Fridays ago. So now it's just smaller electrical parts that they're waiting on to finish off the domestic booster pumps. With the pool area, the spa, we're working on the heater, obviously is in there, but we're missing a breaker still. I spoke with Landon this morning. The breaker arrived on Tuesday, so they're going to be sending someone out to put that breaker in. The thermal heater's already there and ready to go. We are also waiting on 3 motor starters to come from Bradenton for the waterfall element. And then we also found, we replaced the damaged lights in the pool, but we found that some of the transformers had blown during the surge. So we have a proposal from Green and Clean to replace those transformers. For the fire alarm, I spoke with CES last week. The annunciator panels and the mini modules are still on back order at Honeywell. He has presented an alternative option we're discussing amongst the board in terms of replacing those mini modules in a different manner. Elevator, the Guardian ropes we're still waiting for those to come in. New telecom boxes are on site. They're up in the elevator rooms and Kone is installing those as they have free time between emergency calls. Those new telecom boxes will actually run on cell signal versus phone lines. So we'll be able to eliminate 6 phone lines when the time comes for your phone bill. The big thing that we have left to do is the access panels with the door locks. New IQ has the access panels for your buildings in their warehouse now. We're working with Hotwire to finish off the details on the contracts because we will be removing phone lines. And then they will be adding additional wired internet so you can use those touch screen access panels. The new IQ and Hotwire have worked on projects like this before. So they've pretty much got everything lined up. We just are working out the details on what they're going to be charging us for that. The last issue with the atrium doors then is the electrical locks. We mentioned this at our last meeting. The previous locksmith that you guys have been using from All Locks, he sold the business. So now I'm working on finding a replacement locksmith because only certain locksmiths have the ability to do the multi-lock system that you have on your units and doors. So we're working to find someone who can work that master key system. We were looking initially to possibly partner with Flying Locksmiths because they're the folks that are going to be helping us with your unit locks moving forward. But unfortunately, his company is not set up for the multi-lock systems needs. Overhead door, the garage doors, we had an issue in building 3, which we resolved. And literally the next day we ran into an issue, and now building 2's garage door is having a problem. Leo's tried to troubleshoot that. However, it looks like it's a power issue again, and we'll need to get overhead out here to take a look at that. Sure. Oh, I was just getting to that. Building 1, the door works. The issue was there were 2 receivers sending mixed signals to the remotes. So we had 1 receiver. Leo and I just need to have an opportunity to, I need to send the information out. So owners who have old remotes can order new remotes. That way Leo can reprogram them to the right receiver and we can close your door. It just seemed that so many people had the have an older remote, and that's why the door wasn't opening and closing. So we're working on a situation where we can have you guys order remotes. Leo can pick them up, we'll program them, and we'll bring them back just so to keep everything streamlined and simplified. Also with Hotwire, part of the reason we're here today, we're having internet issues in the pavilion. You saw that last meeting when we tried to run the internet out of there and we had some struggles. Hotwire was out last week, Monday. Among other things, they said that we have what they consider to be obsolete wiring. We still run on a CAT3 wire out of the pavilion, and they're on CAT6 now. And also he recommended having an actual switch in the pavilion so that you have the signal right there to be used. They're working on they need to send the construction team out to take a look at that because of the wiring for the CAT3. With the roof, I have passed on the list of all the issues mentioned by the insurance inspectors to Crowther to Crowther Roofing. Currently, we're working on lining them up to be able to look over your tile roofs as well as your flat roofs. So I have a specific person at Crowther that I'm speaking to about that. The grills, I know people have been asking about this. Leo got 1 grill with 1 igniter in, and he hasn't had an opportunity to finish off the rest. We have both igniters for the remaining grills, so he can get those done. We've just had other things come up like painting, and for example, today he's helping with AC maintenance. So we have all the parts. We just need to get him the time to finish that off. And we're also going to need to get a new propane tank for grill 3. Irrigation and landscaping. Currently, we're comparing bids between the company we have that offered installs as well as another company to try and get the best deal we can on replacement irrigation. Once the final proposals are in, the board will go ahead and decide how they want to move forward. And both proposals include a tree trimming to get those seed pods removed from the royals so they'll go back to being self-shedding versus we're having the issues with the fronds still hanging. And then currently is all repaired, all the new controllers are in. We're just working on adjusting everything to make sure that the water levels are good and everything's getting what it needs. And that covers most of what's left for the hurricane repair. The biggest things are still through the electricians, which they're just having issues with time and being able to squeeze us in to help finish off the last things that we need. And then the access panels, which we should be able to get in here in the next few weeks, hopefully, once we finish off the contract stuff.
Okay, any questions or discussions with that board? No?
Well covered.
Okay. So Jim, what I have next is Ronto and the structural integrity study. If you could walk us through maybe a status of that.
I'm sorry, I have my volume turned way down, so I don't have feedback with Marilyn. Can I have you ask me again?
What about?
Oh, so the issue isn't so much that the dumpsters, the trash dumpsters, isn't so much with the hurricane issue. It's more just wear and tear. I've worked with Waste Management. They've come out and they've replaced some wheels for Leo, but we're gonna have them come out and either fix some more or work on getting some new dumpsters in there so that they're just issues with them being off balance. But Leo thinks it's more having to do with, as you know, use after drop, the trash trucks just drop them on the ground and it's beating them up. So we've had a few repaired, but I'm working on getting the rest done.
Okay. Again, any questions, any discussion, comment, board about that? Is that you, Jim, asking to be taken off mute? Okay. Can you hear me, Dana? You can.
No,
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'd like to have Jim kind of give us an update on the Ronto situation and talk about the upcoming structural integrity study that we'll have to be doing.
I'll be happy to do that. And I apologize. I put myself on mute because I was coughing and
No.
couldn't get back off. First on the Ronto, probably the headline is they are very, very close to having the approvals they need to build the project. There's probably the issues with the CDD around drainage. And the CDD's concern is the flooding on Pelican Colony Boulevard that has been ongoing over the last few years, and how Ronto either helps or hurts that. And South Florida is holding their approval until the CDD works through that with Ronto. But my guess is once they work through that, Ronto will have the approvals to proceed with their project whenever they believe it's time to start. The headline for Castella is pickleball is still along Castella Drive. There's 2 courts, but the city of Bonita Springs did require an 8-foot fence, and they do require noise dampening material to be on the fence. Now, is it e-noise? Is it some other kind of padding like they used in Bonita Bay? That'll be up for debate when they probably install it in 3 years. But that's probably the headline for Castella and on the larger Ronto project.
Okay,
Any questions? Okay, then on the surge study, if we step back, we all remember the Surfside collapse that happened a few years ago. In their wisdom, the Florida legislature decided they were going to step in and require associations to do a better job of creating the reserves necessary to maintain the buildings, so something like that does not happen again. Now, we've always had reserve studies that have done inside the communities. However, the boards have had the ability to influence them. The boards could say, well, don't include that because I'm going to handle that through a special assessment, or that's not an item we want to assess. What the state has now said is they've divided that process into 2 parts. There is what's called the Structural Integrity Reserve Study, which is mandated by the state now, and it covers 10 items very specific to the structure of the facility and to protect life and limb inside the facility. So things like, the structural, electrical, plumbing, the hurricane windows that we've got on the building, and so on. There's these 10 categories that now your reservist will have to review your building and estimate to the state standard with a lot of judgment by the engineer still. And then when they come up with that number has to be reserved. The association does not have the ability to waive any of those items. So while I'm going to say it, Castella has lived with a very low reserve number. Last year in the annual report, Chris Yauch reported it was $139,000. $139,000 in the reserve last year would not have fixed our pool house in the hurricane. That's how skinny our reserves are. So the state now is saying on those 10 items, you are going to have to reserve, and we are going to, I guess, follow up via the fiduciary duty of the board to make sure it happens. Then there's the other stuff that's in the community, things like the pool furniture, the equipment that's inside the pavilion, the roads. These are not life-threatening issues. These still have to be reserved going forward, but the board has some influence as to what you want to reserve or not. For example, if you chose that if in 6 to 8 years you didn't want to reserve for pool furniture, you'll just do a special assessment to replace it. The board would have the ability to do that, and I'm going to say these non-life-threatening type issues. So going forward, we're actually going to have 2 reserve studies. We'll do them at the same time. One is the structural integrity reserve study, and then the other is the reserves for all other items. And then once we get that, we'll be able to include that in the financials of the company and adjust the quarterlies accordingly. The law requires that the structural integrity reserve study be done by the end of 24 for inclusion in the 25 budget. So we could live with our current reserve study and reserve a little over 500,000 a year in 24, but then in 25 we have to be on the new program. So in 2 or 3 minutes, that's the structural integrity reserve study and how the timing works and how the program works going forward.
Okay, Jim, so we were going to try to get that structural integrity study done sooner rather than later because there's going to be a big log jam at the end of 2024. So you have an idea of when that might be?
So I have talked to 3 different engineering firms. They all did recommend waiting until after the spring legislative session because they thought there might be some changes that come out of the legislature this spring. We have quotes for 2 of those 3 engineering firms. And if the board decided to do it this summer or this fall, we could do that. They told me it's about a 4-month process from the time you sign the contract to we finish it. And then when we have that study in October, whatever that number is, that would have to be included in the 24 budget and financials for the association. So we can pull the trigger anytime, and it's about 4 months later, it'll be done.
Well, but we should probably listen to that recommendation to wait until after the spring session's over. When would that be, Jim? And we could do it in a board meeting this summer. We could pull the trigger on that.
Yes, you could. I imagine the spring session's done in May because they're meeting now, and I assume it's 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. Okay, I think that would, go ahead, Marilyn.
Do we have a sense of which company we might be leaning towards?
Well, it's going to be interesting. The quotations we have are from both firms that have done our studies in the past. One was Delta. They've now been taken over by another company. The other was Forge. They've been taken over by Socotec. And I can say that the proposals are interesting. For the company that's given us the lower reserve study in the past, the cost to do both studies is higher. And for the other company where the past study said you have a very high reserve number, their cost to do it is much lower. Okay. Beyond that, there's probably not a whole lot of professional expertise and things like that that I can guide one way or the other in regards to which one to use. We could go out and get a third one and then take, throw out the high and low and use the average between the 3. But right now we've got 2, and that's kind of how you might make your choice. You want a lower reserve number, but pay more? Or do you want a higher reserve number and pay less based on experience?
So I've been attending a lot of the legal conferences on this thing. And one thing that they keep cautioning is to get an appointment booked with somebody. Any comment, Jim?
In talking to the two firms, they did not see it was an issue. If as long as you're willing to go for if you could live with a 4-month time period from start to end. And that includes coming out, doing the inspections, reviewing the drawings, creating the estimate, submitting it for review. The board can review, edit, comment, correct, and then to come up with the final study. They said it's about 4 months. There's been no question about, we can't get it handled from when you call at that point.
Okay.
But I imagine if you get into late 2024, you could have an issue.
So there's a glitch bill being discussed to correct some of the deficiencies in the bill. And one of the big items for Castella, at least, is that currently windows are under the homeowner's responsibility to pay for. This could change to the association having to finance that. And I would guess that would be a big number. The other issue is, what is the definition of full funding? So they're going to have to come up with some sort of a definition, because it's not quite clear what it actually is. So those are two elements that could catch us by surprise and affect, the bottom line, basically.
So Jim, as I understand it, Delta is one of the engineering firms, and Delta would be probably a little more aggressive in identifying issues and costs. And as a result, the reserves would be higher with them. We assume that anyway. Where Forge is less aggressive and our reserve costs would be less, but you take the risk that you're not covering your risks, correct?
You do.
Yep.
But one thought I had was, Forge tells me they've done a lot of these studies, so their database of costs may be better than what Delta is using. Now, they may be more liberal with their estimates, that's true, but it also might be they just have more experience. To give you an idea, I could see the Delta could be double on what the estimated costs are to repair the roofs than what Forge came up with. That's one number. So you could look at a doubling of our reserve requirement to $1 million a year versus the 525, which is the current Forge funding, based on the last Forge estimate done, I think, in July of 21. So there's no easy answer here, Randy, that you say you do this or you do that. You just have to kind of, when they get through the spring session, we'll have to call back to the two firms and try to ask some questions. They were both very happy to send me proposals, but when I've called back several times to try to talk about the proposals, it's crickets.
Yeah.
I don't get return phone calls. So given that I knew we weren't pursuing this hard right now, I have not, pressed them really hard, because I can't go sign a contract tomorrow. But if the board says you want to do it this year, we can go push and ask those questions.
Well, in my opinion, I think that we should, go ahead and get a third quote while we have a little time. We'll wait for the spring session to conclude, and then we have to make some decisions, I guess, come a subsequent meetings. So who would you use for the other? Velocity?
They have said to me they're interested in giving us a quote to do that work. And they're a third firm that's starting to look at the building. But until we get past the first floor issues, I didn't want to start asking them for any more work, because even that seems to be dragging a little bit.
Yeah.
One criteria that I would like added to the study is the separation of the buildings. Also to have the, the financials separated by building, because it's possible that we replace some components in one building and not another, and we need to be able to keep track of that.
And the past Delta study did have that, past Forge study did not. And so that was one of the requests that I wanted to make in a follow-up, because Forge did not highlight that they would do 3 different buildings.
So at the end of the day, we want to be accurate, right? So we don't really have anything to say that Forge is correct or Delta is correct. So we need that tiebreaker, I think, to,
Almost, yeah.
okay.
I mean, one thing you could do if you wanted to analyze something like roofs, for instance, is we could ask for quotes ourselves on redoing the flat roof, for example. Then we would have a better idea whose number was closer.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. Okay, well, let's table this subject for a subsequent meeting for the new board. And but in the meantime, could we begin to do something with Velocity to ask them?
Randy, if you want me to, I can certainly put the request in.
Yeah, let's do that. I don't
Okay.
think there's any harm in doing that.
Okay. I don't know of any other engineers we've used in the building in the last few years. Are there any?
Mm-mm.
Then those are the 3, because they know the facilities from the past work. Okay, I'll reach out to Velocity and get that going.
Any discussion or objection to that, board?
No,
Okay, I mean, I don't think we need a motion for that, but let's go ahead and do that, Jim.
Okay,
Okay, thank you very much for that. So the next on our agenda is the announcement of directors. I think, as you know, or most of you know, we had a recent election and we had 2 open positions. We had 2 people run for those 2 director positions. So we did not need an election. So Marilyn McGowan is one of our new directors, a new 2-year term, and Dr. Walt Beaver is our other director for a 2-year term. So welcome. And that leads me to adjournment. Do I have a motion for adjournment? And we'll start
Randy, I think you've got one more step. Dana?
You have the owners, if they have
Oh,
comments.
sorry.
comments.
Questions, yep. My bad.
anybody?
Well, everybody's on mute right now.
Well, they can raise their hand if they have a question.
See, Chris.
There are a large number of people who are dark. They don't have their pictures on, so we don't know. So if they're trying to speak, you can't see them. I'm not sure that's going to work.
I don't know how many people.
I would
Well,
just unmute anybody and everybody be quiet and see what happens.
No, there's a raise your hand function here.
Well,
It's
there's
under the,
Tess, do you hear me?
Oh, there, Don
You're
Scott.
done.
That's just, I don't have anything to say, just do a test. Very good.
You passed, Don.
Thank you. So people can respond. If they're not interested.
Okay. All right, with that, then I need a motion for adjournment.
Well, I just would like to thank Jim for being a board member and great team player, and enjoyed working with you during the hurricane. He was a professor, I was Mary Ann. So, and the rest of the board, we couldn't determine who was Gilligan and the rest. So, but anyway, thank you, Jim, for everything.
Happy to be part of the
Thanks,
board this
Jim.
last year. Good luck,
All right.
Walt.
okay.
Thank you.
And Jim, I wasn't saying goodbye because I don't intend to say goodbye.
Yeah,
We intend to use you.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, you won't necessarily have a vote on the board, but we would enjoy and need your input from time to time. So hope we can.
You're being drafted, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm a friend of the board, I can see. Happy to help. Happy to
Yeah.
help.
Appreciate it. Okay, now we'll get to adjournment. And do I have a motion for adjournment?
yes.
Second,
Vote to adjourn.
we need Walt to stay online.
Oh, yeah. So now that concludes the annual membership meeting, and we'll go right into the meeting of the new board of directors. I guess we'll start with organization of officers. We need nominations for all the different positions, and then we'll go through responsibilities after that.
Randy, are you willing to serve again?
Is that you, Walt? Sorry.
Yeah. Are you willing to serve again?
I wouldn't mind at all if someone else wanted to take the position. I will do it, but I wouldn't be offended at all if someone else would like the opportunity. It's a wonderful opportunity.
I'll bet to me, you've done a yeoman's job, and if you would be willing to accept, I would be willing to nominate you as president again.
Second that.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All right. Well, I appreciate your confidence, I think.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And
All right.
the rest of us are more than willing to help with that, because we recognize that's a task. So.
All right. Is it appropriate for me? Who knows the Robert's rules? And is it appropriate for me to make a nomination?
Mhm.
Okay,
Sure.
well, I would nominate Marilyn McGowan for vice president.
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
Okay. And then we have what? Treasurers and secretaries. So need nominations for treasurer. I would nominate Marilyn to continue her dual role. Sorry, Marilyn.
If she's willing.
I second.
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye.
Mm.
So Marilyn's our secretary and, I'm sorry, our
No.
VP and treasurer.
Yeah.
And so now we need a secretary. You volunteering, Marianne?
Sure.
Okay, well, I would nominate Marianne as our secretary.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
So now let's talk about responsibilities a little bit other than those other roles. You know, Joe's been leading us in the operations end of things. Joe, I would hope that you would continue to do that.
Yes.
And I hear, Doc Beaver, that you know a little bit about landscaping and horticulture and all of that.
I grow great tomatoes in Indiana, and whatever I can do down here, I'm happy to do.
Okay. Well, Marianne, you know, you held that role before. Do you want to stay involved in that at all?
I whatever y'all want me to do, I'd be happy to help. It always welcome Walt too. Sure.
Yeah, do it arm in arm. That's fine.
Sure.
Okay. What am I missing, board? We got finances covered. We got
Well, we've got the SERS study and, Jim has agreed to continue being responsible for that. I'll be working with him from the financial side. I would add that we also have a volunteer in David Sutton who is going to help me on the financial side. An extra set of eyes, because it has such an impact, is very welcome in this regard. So
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, David has offered to help out as he can. So so Marilyn's got a heavy workload, so she can have some help on that. Okay. Well, I guess that's all we have for this meeting. We covered everything else. Any other discussion? Any other conversation? Board? All right. Any comment from the members, from the residents? All right. Then we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved, second.
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 All in favor?
All in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you, Mindy.
Bye.